Very much for joining me tonight, and thank you to everybody that joined the chat on the premiere. It was really nice to see all of the new people arriving. So I can see Darren's in, and Joe, and Fonda, Stevie Trees. There's Paddy. Hi, Paddy. Let me see who else is in. We'll give the others a chance to get in. Mark's just took Roy out for a walk. It's been really warm here. So he's left it till it's cooled down, so he just took him out. But you'll hear him coming back later on, I would imagine. So today we were talking about what I would call invisible life forms. And it's not my word, I didn't make it up, other people use it as well. But it kind of covers some of the reports that we heard tonight in the premiere. So these kind of cases where people can hear something mooching around them. They can see the branches breaking, and in some places they say the whole tree moves or the tree shakes, but they can't actually see the thing that's doing it. Andy Cole's experience is a prime example of it. He could see the movement as the being shimmied up the tree, but he couldn't see the being itself, and they're far more prevalent than people actually realise. So one of the things I wanted to discuss tonight, let me just get my notes up, is many of the questions that you're going to ask me is, what is it, Deb? And the honest answer is, I don't know. Can't tell you what it is, but these are the theories behind it. That it is a creature of some kind, or a wild human, that's using a natural camouflage on its hair so that we, as humans, cannot see it as it moves around in our environment. Sometimes they have been picked up on FLIR, so that would suggest a body heat of some kind. But let's not forget, energy is hot and cold, so, that could cover that. Then other people, myself included for a long time, I'm not so sure now, but back in the day, when I was studying cryptids and only cryptids, you have to look at... A prime example was the case we were discussing tonight, Thetford Forest, for instance. There are a large number of cryptid reports in Thetford Forest. And Richard took a report from his friend, Mark and Kerra, who saw something on the Linford Hall estate that they described as humanoid in shape, and it was standing at the side of the road as they were driving in. And a number of deer were seen as they were driving back out later on, just studying the road, staring out, at them. So I realised that there was a case very similar to that in Cannock Chase. So would this be a cryptid creature of some kind that is using the shadow or the shade of the habitat around it to just hide itself, like an Amazon warrior would do, or someone on the Serengeti? Is it like a learnt behaviour is what I'm trying to say? Is it what they do? Like, you don't find an Amazon tribe, they find you. So is it that? Is it just a creature doing that? And then some people have asked, and it's a very prevalent question, and it's something I'm starting to lean towards. Is it to do with the land? And in two categories. A being, is it something elemental? So it's just something, it's a being of some kind that we don't understand. But if so, why is it making all of that racket? What's the reason for that racket? So there's got to be... Animals don't do things for nothing. There's always a reason behind their behaviour. So if we're dealing with something that's animalistic, including us humans, there would be a reason for that behaviour. And it's the opposite of staying elusive, isn't it, when you think about it? Because it's the noise that draws attention. So when Richard took the report from his friends Mark and Kerra, he did the right thing. He went back to the area with Mark, and they sat on top of... Do you know when you're in the forestry land and you get the wood cut and they just pile it high? They were sat up there, and they sat up there a long time quietly. And that's exactly what they described. A creature, a thing, a something that they could not see. It was like Predator from the movie. Was at first low down on the ground, they could hear it, and then it was high up in a tree at the back of them, to the left. And as I say, so that could be elemental connected to the land, but also ancient. What if it's an ancient being of some kind that's on that land and it wants you to move, it wants to scare you in some way? What if that's the answer to it? Or what if it's all the above and more? We call it the supernatural, don't we? The paranormal for a reason, because we don't understand it. But it's the same way that before people realised that they were serial killers, every kill that was found was blamed on a wolf or a werewolf, and in fact it was a habit of a man that did it. Does that make sense to you? But because we didn't understand it, we've seen it as something kind of magical and mystical. And then the other question is it a tech of some kind? Is it some kind of technical device that they have, whether they are extraterrestrial, flesh and blood human being, or cryptid, that mirrors its surroundings? Because that fits it far better. Chris Hull's wife Judith said the being that she saw was prismatic. It was presenting its surroundings back at you so that you couldn't see it, you couldn't make it out. I'm just going to close this window. Mark's left the window open. And I can hear the traffic driving me mad. One sec. That's better. I could hear the ATVs going past the window. They were really loud. It's ATV season out there, isn't it? Yeah, so a tech of some kind. So logically, let's look at them logically. Let's give a reason why it could be and why it couldn't be. So a natural camo. Why not? Humans have been using mud and leaves and greenery and their surroundings to hide from others or to hunt in a hunting situation. So why can't it be said that that's what these cryptids are doing if they're cryptids? One of the man was talking, he said he was on a nature reserve. And he'd only been there about 20 years, the one on Fleetwood. Before that it was a power station. So whatever was following him, he could hear it walking on the gravel behind him, and he said it was only about 30 feet behind him. He should have been able to see it. Bring my camera a bit closer so you can see the chat. There we go. So yeah, he should have been able to see that, and he didn't. So I've grabbed a couple of cases tonight, and I'll read them out to you as if we were actually doing the premiere, so it can kind of show the patterns behind them. An elemental affecting its surroundings. Somebody wrote to me in the comments and said, could this being be an elemental of some kind? And we can't perceive it because it's in its natural state. And yes, it could be. You know, why not? But that brings me back to the reason of the noise. Why the smashing and the making of the racket and the noise? That sounds like something trying to scare you off rather than draw you in a way. Most of these reports that I spoke about tonight and the ones that I'm going to do on the live all take place right on the edge of Ministry of Defence land. So could it be a tech of some kind? Could we be seeing some kind of super soldier? And no, there's a name for it. I've never watched the Predator film, but Mark has many, many times. And then I know there's a name for that creature as it's in that prismatic state and it's moving through. Well, if we've had that idea and put it in a movie, I always say this, so that other people, like, ideas that kind of come from somewhere, isn't it? Is it a tech? Is it a tech, an alien tech of some kind? Or, you know, a strategical tech of some kind that we don't know? But if so, what's the objective? Why would we put money into that? What is the end result of that? Don't know. To me, it makes far more sense that it's either something ancient, connected to the land, that we've kind of woken up or annoyed, and that is the reason for the noise and the banging, and they want you out there, they just want you to go. And that other bit be, you know, that they are just hiding out there and we don't see them because they are that good at hiding in their own surroundings, you know. Who was it said that D.B. Cooper did the perfect crime because he was so average and so normal that you wouldn't pick him out of a crowd? And it's that you can walk right past someone in the woodland. If someone's set up in a blind or they set up to hunt or whatever, you can walk right past them. But they hear you coming because they're sat quietly doing what they're doing. And most humans, we make quite a bit of racket when we walk. Even if we've got the dog, there's the dog's chain, the collar, your boots on the path, you know, if you're talking to your friend, that sound carries. So if I'm trying to push the agenda of people, say, a British Swiftfoot or the British Wildman, then we should have cases where not only are they seen, but also audio evidence. There's got to be some form of whooping, some kind of noise behind them, because if we're saying that they're flesh and blood, then they would make noises as they move. No matter how silent they were, they would at some points in their life make a noise, wouldn't they? So we're looking for these, and I'm looking for paranormal reports as well. There's a case in Paul in Hull, and there's 4 guys in a car. And for a number of nights, you just drive up there. It's pretty much like Winter Hill when there's not a whole lot going on. You just drive up there and hang about with your mates and stuff. And or if your mate's got a birthday, go for a walk in the woods or whatever, and you're all lined up at car. And that's what we used to do. We used to have a right laugh doing that when we were younger. And they were there once when it was snowy, and they'd been there a number of times when they'd seen like a dark humanoid shape at the end of the lane. So it was just a farm lane out in the countryside that they couldn't quite make out, but they noticed it. And he had a little dog with him called Patch, and he let the dog out, and it was terrified of something. And she said he was so frightened he jumped in through the window. And on this one occasion when it was snowy, they could hear the sound of feet approaching, thud, thud, thud. And they could see the footprints being formed in the snow coming to the car that they were sitting in. But there was nothing there to see. There was no body for those footsteps to have been made. That must have been absolutely terrifying. And like most blokes, he said, I just floored it. I just put my foot down and I floored it and I got out of there. And that's exactly what you would do. So for the people who say, well, why didn't they video that? Or why didn't they take photographs of that? I don't know. I wasn't there with them. And probably not their first thought. I think your first thought is primal. You know, you don't instantly clutch for your phone. I wouldn't have done. If I'd have had a phone with me that day, I would not have thought at any point of trying to take a photograph of it. I didn't have that time to think. I just reacted and off I went. And many of the witnesses say that. So that's why it's very rare, I think, that people actually do, you know, take a photograph of said creature. Let me just get my laptop. So I pulled my map up because there's a number of cases that I feel fit in with this. Let me just check my chat first. If you've got any questions for me, put them in capitals so I can find them. I'm just having a scroll through before I carry on wittering. Not seeing it. Everybody was speaking about chocolate before. I'm really, really hungry. So when I finish this, I'm going to go and have a brownie and a brew. But there's one case. There's certain cases that stand out in your mind. And the first one for me, when I think of something that's can be heard and is moving, is definitely Cockgrove. And that's in the Nottingham area. But the case actually starts in Colwick. And it's a paranormal investigator. Well, he's a 14 really, so he investigates all kinds of phenomena. So he was in his 70s when he shared these with me. And basically there's him and a team, this paranormal team. And they're at Colwick Heights, 1973, it's about 12:30 at night. And he said, one of our team members was alerted to the public that dog walkers and kissing, canoodling people in the cars were actually being disturbed along the lane at Colwick. So he said it was a Saturday night, and along with several other paranormal investigators, we set off for the area in a Dormobile van. That takes me back. Arriving there at about 11 p.m. We parked approximately halfway down the lane, a short grass field, and we parked facing the way that we'd entered. There are 2 small woods, one on each side of the field. The one on our left contained a small quarry. We patrolled the area in pairs, carrying one walkie-talkie and a torch apiece. We walked down the side of each wood, as well as the field area itself. Eventually it began to rain, so we set off back to the van for a well-earned cup of tea, or a coffee for us all. The rain was kind of sounding on the top of the roof. He said we were quite comfortable inside in the van. There's 3 sat either side facing each other and the driver's in the driver's seat. It was a while, we discussing something or other, and the driver shouted for quietness. Shh. The rest of us could hear nothing but the rain falling on the roof. Listen, he said. We did. And that's when we heard a faint but heavy breathing sound, slowly approaching towards the right side of the van. We sat upright, warily, as we listened to the slowly approaching sound. Passing by the outside of the van was a deep, heavy breathing sound, and it was blotted out the rain. It was that loud. The breathing sound was that loud, it drowned out the noises of the night and the constant dripping on the roof. Reaching the 2 back doors, the extremely loud breathing noise lowered in height down to the level of the foot with the square windows, and it stayed there. The back door windows were approximately a foot from the top of the doors themselves. Something was staring through one of the windows at us, and we couldn't see anything, not a sign of anything standing there. But this heavy, stentorian breathing just continued, unabated, all the time. Ron, sitting next to me and nearest to the back door on his right, shakily raised his left arm in the air, and he got hold of a heavy foot-long rubber-encased torch, and he's there holding it like a club. Well, something, better than nothing I suppose, even against what must have been an 8-foot something or other. We guesstimated due to the height of the van roof. And then it lowered downward slowly to peer through the window. And that's exactly what it sounded like. As if something, around 8 feet in height, was watching us through the window of that van, breathing heavily the whole time. It went on for an eternity, or so it seemed. And eventually, the breathing stopped as it slowly walked away from the van. We all gave a sigh of relief at that point and just headed for home. Can you imagine being in that van? They must have been absolutely terrified. I'd have been absolutely terrified. Strangely, not in the 70s, but let me get the date. I'll go get a date for you. There is another case of a weird, dark, humanoid-shaped thing down there at Colwick. And there's the White Lady of Colwick. And if I remember rightly, the next case is at Cotgrove, I think, near the Attenborough Reserve. 1 minute. Because there is also a report of a British Bigfoot down there. Yeah, Cotgrave, let me get it. Yeah. So we've got the same chap. So it's Nigel, I think, if I remember rightly, was his name. And he's gone out again on the same mission. Not far away, only about 2 miles from where he was previously. And he's on what's called Althorpe Crossroads. He said it was about 12 midnight approximately. He'd phoned his mate to go with him, and unfortunately his mate didn't want to go. He said there was a small herd of cows when I got there. It was about 11 p.m. and I could see approximately a dozen horses. And they were gathered at the metal gate entrance to the large field. Around 20 minutes of, playing with the horses and that, we were all best friends, but I realised I had to go and get the investigation done. He said, entering the field, I walked to the side of a wide tall hedge which separated it from the country lane. It's on the Foss Way, if anybody's interested in looking it up. He said, it was approaching 12:30 a.m. when I heard what I thought was a faint snuffling sound coming from the lane behind me. I thought to myself, whatever's making that noise was walking really slowly. He said, it wasn't till a dozen or so long seconds later that I finally recognised what this noise was. It didn't sound like snuffling now. It sounded increasingly like loud breathing as it slowly approached. It was the identical, deep, heavy breathing that I'd heard at Colwick Heights. My senses were fully alert at this point as it passed me by on the other side of the lane's hedge. He said it stood at the back of the motor van when I saw it at the Heights, but this time I didn't have a van to shelter in. He said I was really angry with myself for putting myself in that kind of situation where something could have gone wrong for me. And unfortunately for him, the heavy breathing moved off and moved away. So that's like one example of what these could be going on. This could be paranormal. So you get a lot of cases from courting couples. Strangely, a lot of them around Thetford. And let's don't get it wrong, there's people who go dogging in the woodlands of the UK all year, and there's lots of courting couples that go, you know, and people who are in affairs, all manner of reasons for sitting in car parks at night in your car. Last night, I've had a lot of pain this week. With my back, I've been in a lot of pain, and I couldn't work. Normally, I'd use work as a distraction, and I just couldn't. I couldn't get on top of it. So, like Mark said to me yesterday, "Come on, let's go out." So we made a flask. We took some brownies up to. We drove up to the farm at the top, and I just sat there, and caught my breath, let the cobwebs blow off. Had a coffee with him, and we just talked about the week and things between ourselves and what our plans were for next week and what we would be doing DIY wise and things like that. Trying to get everything done before autumn comes, because it's coming really quickly this year. And it was like a mini holiday. It's what I needed. But the idea, sometimes we'll stay up there for hours on end and we just watch the sky. Sometimes we fall asleep. Like last night we fell asleep. Roy will curl up and he'll go to sleep, and me and Mark just nod off, and it's the best sleep that you get all week. Other times we'll stay for maybe an hour and then we'll come back down, because an hour's all you need sometimes up there. Just go up and feed the horses and things like that. But the idea of being in that car and hearing something, walking around it, breathing really heavily, that's estimated about 8 feet tall, that bends down to look at me through the window, is absolutely terrifying. Can you imagine? And there are hundreds of people in the UK that live in the cars or vans or converted ambulances. There's a massive van life culture here. And don't believe me, go to St Anne's on Sea at night and see if you can get a spot on that promenade, because you can't. It's an amazing. You get a lot of stick if you come from the traveller community, because people will be like, "Oh, you're travellers, you don't have a house." But there is a massive community of people who don't want to buy sticks and mortar. I don't want to put money into bricks and mortar. I don't. My plan is to buy a piece of land and put me a nice caravan on it, and that'll be me happy till I meet me maker. Yeah, I don't want to put money in bricks and mortar, and I'd just be a slave to it, wouldn't I? Each their own. We're all entitled to what we want, aren't we? But I've never been one for a big house. We rattled around in that big 3-bedroom house. I couldn't wait to get out of it. But those are the ones from Nottingham. But they're all over the country. Ireland has cases like this. Scotland. Actually, I'm going to do a case for you from Fort William. Ben McDew speaks of walking footsteps that follow people and they can't be seen. In some cases, the footprints are left within the snow. And they're endless. I was looking last night. I thought, oh, well, I'll pull a few things out for the podcast, and I'll make sure that I've got my notes ready and everything for the live stream. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, there's so many of them. I didn't realise there were that many of them until you kind of putting them all into one document, and then you do. I promised myself one day I'm going to put a series of books together, and I'm going to kind of categorise all of the. So we do the British Bigfoot ones, so 7.5 feet to 9 feet tall, looks like a man, flat face, airy body, big across the shoulders and chest. I'll do one on werewolves and dogmen. I should do one on these invisible life forms, because there's that many of them. I could do a paranormal one as well, and put the paranormal cases in, all the reports that have been sent over the years and things like that. So I keep promising myself I'm going to do it, and they sat there in draft, and I just need to get round and get them put out. I should just do it as a PDF and put them out there for free. It'd be good advertising, that, wouldn't it? I do have a couple of PDFs like that. If anyone ever wants to read one about Cannock Chase for free, I put one together years ago. I was going to write a book on Cannock Chase. And like I say, I got us about 35 sighting reports down there at the time, and that's just sat there. So I just made it into a PDF. And sometimes I share them on my Patreon. I just pop them on there so the guys can see them. Where's Mark back where I've just seen the car pull up? You tell I'm in pain, I'm vaping today. It's very rare I vape on camera or smoke, but if I wasn't now, I'm in that much pain, I'd be chewing on my nails. I've actually chipped a bone at the bottom of my spine. Went to the hospital this week for an X-ray and a scan, and when I fell, I've knocked the bone in my spine. So literally on the edge of like breaking my bloody back. So they're talking about putting me in like a rigid carry on. I don't know. I've got to go back to the hospital this week while they have a look. I'm used to pain. I've never felt pain like this. I can't sleep with it. It's driving me crackers. I can't eat. I can't work. I can't do anything. And that's the opposite of me. But I was determined to do the live stream. I said to Mark, no, I'm doing it. Even if I only do it till 9:30, I'm doing it. And then I'll go and get in bed and rest because I'm sick of being in my bed this week. So yeah, that's why I'm vaping. It's rare that people see me do that. I don't know, I was raised like, don't you dare smoke in front of people. So our next case that I wanted to read out to you, being remiss, let me have a mooch back and make sure there's no questions there from anyone. Joe will have me. Hey, we're doing well tonight, Joe.
No, I don't.
Hey, sweetheart, could you do me a favour while you're in? Shut those 2 windows at the top.
Yeah.
I can hear the car slide. But did you have a good walk, mate? All I'm going to make is just let him rub himself against the couch several times while he gets settled. You're supposed to not come back from your walk more lively than when you went out. Where did you go? Right. Have you not field?
Not been there for ages. So.
Yeah, sure. I just wait a minute till he stops being noisy and then I'll
Carry on.
carry on. He'll have a drink of water and he'll go and lie down.
Quick.
So yeah, so the next one we're going to go to is a place called Sidwood Clough. And a clough normally in the UK means like a hang or a cleave or an overlook where you can see for quite a long way. I'm just going to pull it up while Matt's doing Windows. Sidwood. So this report, the one that we spoke about first, seemed more paranormal, didn't it, in an aspect? This thing that's walking around, that's making a noise and you can hear it breathing. What are you doing?
I was looking at his combo.
It was on the sofa earlier, but I don't know where it is now. Can I keep going?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this came in 2018. I think this is more of like a flesh and blood kind of. Well, you tell me. Harwood Forest. We've got a number of wild UK wild. I'm just distracted because Mark's making noise. UK Wildman accounts and British Bigfoot accounts. So this came in through my Facebook page, the BBR Facebook group that's there. And thank you to everybody who's joined it in the last 2 weeks. That's been amazing to see everyone there. And it says, I've just put a report in a Bigfoot UK page on Facebook. I just put up a video about the Harwood accounts. And a gentleman contacted me and gave me permission to share his experience that happened at Tarsit Burn, which is close to Sidwood. He said, I've been going walking in this area now, whenever I can, for about 3 years. I'm from Newcastle, so it's a bit a ways from me to get there, and a fair walk in once you get out your car. I have experienced some strange things up there, and also has my friend. The first incident was not actually me, but it was my flatmate who was hiking and had an experience at Harwood. This happened in 2017. My flatmate went out without me and he decided to go up there pretty much at the crack of dawn, so it was the right light for the photograph that he was taking. He said, there's a small house in Harwood, I think it's the ranger's house, and just past this house there's a huge pond. So my friend gets to work getting set up and he sets up his cameras to film, take photos and do what you do. He said nothing happened. And as he came back home happy that day, it was when he was looking at the film later, he noticed a strange audio coming from the area he'd filmed in. It was around 6:30 a.m. And on the camera, off in the background, you can hear crunching and branches breaking and quite a bit of unusual noise. Then 3 big tree knocks. Those tree knocks happened twice. I asked him if anyone else was around, and he tells me absolutely no one else is around. And he's never come across another soul whilst he's been out there ever. He said he was so focused on what he was doing at the time that he never even noticed it happening. It was only when he came back later and he looked back on it. The second incident was sometime later on in the year when we were up there again. This time we'd stopped beside the same Rager's house in the middle of the woods, as there was a couple of picnic tables outside. We just started having a cup of tea when we heard this almighty bang. To be honest, it sounded like a massive log being thrown against a tree, then a lot of commotion. It sounded like something big was rushing through the brush at speed, moving trees and brush as it went. We both ran over to where the noise came from, and there was nothing there. Whatever it was, it seemed to be moving very fast for something that had just thrown a massive log about. We were a bit spooked, to say the least. He said, I went up there just a few weeks ago, and this time I actually decided to do some tree knocks myself to see what had happened. I did a couple, but nothing came back. He said, and then there was silence for about 2 minutes, and then he heard 2 knocks in reply. He said, I even checked around the house to see if there was anybody in there, but there was nothing. He said there was just nothing out there that day, and we couldn't account for what was making that noise. But as I say, Harwood Forest, there are a number of reports there, because it's just on the border of Kielder, you see. You know, Damien Robinson, fell wanderer, well-known bushcrafter, he had his own strange experiences at Harwood. And it's ideal territory, it's absolutely ideal. Stu Hill had a similar experience to this guy. He was walking through with a friend, and they had smelt this awful smell. And after a few seconds, something just came rushing out of the trees. They couldn't see it. It was a definite bluff charge type situation, crashing and smashing. And you imagine like a big male gorilla as it comes out and it does that run, and it's trying to disperse everybody before it actually has to. No animal wants to fight. They don't want to put themselves in danger. So some of them will do a massive diversion technique, and that will work, and it'll move people on. And I think that's what's going on in this sense. So this kind of puts down the flesh and blood line, you know, more than anything. That's it. Story time with Auntie Rebs. Yeah. I mean, I can call it if you want. Are we having a quiet lively chat? No, we've got no idiots in or out like that. That's absolutely fine. So, yeah, right. I want to have a look at encounter with an invisible life form. Let me put this in. I'm glad it's quiet tonight. I've got quiet energy on me, haven't I? Maybe it gone. Yeah, I've got it. Just trying to find the area for you. So this is, I believe, Holt Country Park. So we're looking down near Thetford. We're on like the Norfolk, Suffolk coast down that area. It said Liam's experience happened in 2018. He was, let me find out, he's another guy who's into photographer, so a similar reason. He said he goes for walks around the mixed woodland and takes pictures for wildlife as a hobby for what he does. One day he called in to see me, and he told me that he thought he'd just met a ghost by the pond in the woods. So I asked him to run through the details so I could help him find an explanation, as he said he felt a bit silly for thinking ghosts were real. This was taken by a BBR researcher. He said anyway, he's sitting on a wooden bench near the pond bird watching when he started to hear what he thought was a dog walker coming over the grass area behind him. He said the sound was like that rasping breathing noise that a dog makes when it pulls against the lead too much and kind of chokes itself. Liam thought nothing of it. He carried on watching birds, and after a while he realised the noise was getting closer. So he stood up, expecting to see someone with a dog, but there was nobody there. The breathing sound kept coming nearer, and Liam decided to stand his ground. Eventually, he was looking down to where the noise was coming from, and it had stopped moving now, but he could hear it, and it was coming from somewhere near his feet. Eventually the noise just stopped as quickly as it had begun, and Liam walked home. He said I wasn't able to give him an explanation. I said it could have just been a ghost and that he shouldn't be afraid of it. And I advised him that if he was ever in a situation again when he could hear something that seemed invisible, that he should still point his camera and keep taking photos, because sometimes the camera sees things that the eye misses. Good advice. But yeah, if it was as close as his feet and he couldn't see it, then that doesn't seem to be something that's flesh and blood, does it? So, the last case I'm going to talk to you about tonight is the Fort William footsteps. Now, there are a number of mountain ranges in the UK, and most of them have a report like this. I just pulled the Fort Williams because it comes from an actual climber. So it wasn't taken by a BBR investigator or anything like that. It's come from a woman who actually does her own blog on climbing. And she said, some years ago now, myself and my friends decided to do a wild camp at the campsite at the foot of Ben Nevis and walk the mountain the next day, spending the following night sleeping rough on the mountain, which I thought would be a nice little adventure and give us something to talk about for years to come. Our first night's camp was pretty uneventful. The second night, things changed. Sleeping in a damp, cold bivvy is not at all pleasant. I did finally drop off to sleep, but I woke up for some unknown reason in the middle of the night. And as I lay awake, I could hear footsteps walking around us. At first, I was quite interested in this, as I thought it was an animal of some description maybe had come to pay us a visit. But as time went on, I began to realise that this was definitely a two-legged creature of some kind. Those steps were purposeful. The footsteps by now were really close, only a couple of feet away, and I started to get the chills. I had a massive fear come over me. She said, given my colleagues were only a couple of feet away, I had no real reason to worry, the big strong man, so I eventually drifted off to sleep. I remember waking up about 6 o'clock in the morning. I had ice covering the outside of me bivvy, and I decided to pack everything up and walk to the campsite for a well-deserved shower. The other two eventually packed their equipment and followed me down the mountain. Dean complained heavily about my kicking him in the head as his bivvy was on the ground at my feet. Simon, complete with smoking jacket, said he slept like a baby. I only briefly thought in passing about the footsteps creeping around us during the night, but I put it down to being overtired and possibly being awoken, from my sleep, and I don't remember walking near his tent. She said the drive, as usual, was a bit monotonous. We were on the M6 motorway. I hate the M6, don't I? And by then, we'd run out of things to talk about until Dean said, did you hear any footsteps walking around us last night? And at this point, I realised I hadn't dreamt it after all. We discussed this for a while, and none of us could explain it. Simon didn't hear it, but me and Dean did. She said, and to this day, it still gives us the chills. I have no idea what it was. And this was only some years ago. I'll never know what kind of experience that was. I don't know what name to put on it. She said, and we just drove home and that were it. As I'm writing this, I still get the chills about who or what it would have been. And that's a lass called Trish Hale. She's quite a well-known mountaineer. So let me have a look. I know that there are other reports similar to this in the same area. There's one. I just need to pull it up. I want to show you the similarities. This is just a few peaks over on the other side. So this is at Loch Awe. So I'm camping on the southern end of Loch Awe a few years ago, and it wasn't by choice. We'd been forced there by the wind. The weather was really bad, and the campsites were scarce, and to be honest, we were exhausted, to the point where I was worried about my girlfriend. She was cold, and she was starting to slur her speech. I wanted to get her warmed up as quickly as I could, and after a lot of looking around, we settled for a small clearing in amongst some trees a few metres from the shore. There was enough room for a fire and a bit of a tent. I put the tent up, got her in a sleeping bag, put her in, and went to get some firewood to make some hot food and some tea. I had a strange feeling of vulnerability while I was collecting wood. Never felt like that before. I kept stopping what I was doing and like looking around me. I had a feeling that somebody was about to walk up to me. I wasn't scared, but I just felt that something was about to happen. A kind of anticipation. I thought maybe a gamekeeper was going to come along or move us off the land or something. Or it was another person out hiking. Anyway, it was cold and wet and the going was slow. Eventually my girlfriend came out to find me, sit with me while I was splitting the wood. Since she admitted she'd got an uneasy feeling while she was on her own back at the tent. I didn't tell her about the feeling I had of being watched. I didn't want to spook her anymore. We went back together, got the camp sorted, set up for an early night. I got the fire going, fed us both, made some hot drinks, and we settled down to try and get some sleep. That night, I had to get up in the middle of the night to take care of some business. I walked across the clearing and went behind a holly bush, and there I got the most intense feeling of danger I've ever had in my life. It felt like I'd walked somewhere I should not have gone. That night was very dark, and I accept that the dark has an effect on your brain. I felt an immediate and urgent need to get away from that spot right away. So I cut short the business I was taking care of and pretty quickly walked back to the tent, where I stopped, sat outside for a while to see what I could see and listen. Didn't hear anything. Nothing much happened for the rest of that night. And it was a good little camp and free. So for the next few nights, we stayed in the same spot. Nothing happened. It was an okay camp, you know. And I got the same feeling though every time I went near that holly bush. It was not until we left that site that I realised the effect on both of our moods that it had. Within minutes of leaving, we both felt happy, uplifted. And I realised there'd been something wrong back there. A real fear of foreboding kind of feeling. He said this story does not translate that well when I write it out. But I'm hoping that it might trigger other people's memories. And we might get some more stories of the scary and unexplainable things that happen out there. That would have creeped me out. What about you, Mark? The feet around the tent. Will you get me a drink of water, please? The feet around the tent, most definitely. I mean, when you're in a camp, it's one thing. You hear people going to loo at middle at night, and you'll hear people get up about 5 in the morning and make a brew and do breakfast and all. You get used to those noises, don't you? And like the owls and the rooks and all of that goes along with it. But that I don't know how to feel, because in Loch Awe, you're in the middle of nowhere. There's not a whole lot of anything up there. There's another very similar one on one of the other lochs. It might be Loming. I'll have to check. And if you keep chickens or ducks or fowl, they need grit as part of the diet. And one of the free places to get it is from around a lake or a loch. And there's a young girl and a dad and a mum, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting some grit for the fowl. And same thing, she said this awful feeling of foreboding came over them. All of them. And they were actually had stones thrown at them, kind of pelted at them from the side of the loch. And she said it was absolutely terrifying, but once they left the area, it lifted. These kind of cases, I think, fit with the ancient theory. The theory that this is the ground. This is something from the essence of the ground that's coming up. So it's not, pardon me, it's not a physical being. It's something out there as old as time that we don't understand. I think there have been 3 occasions when I've done investigations where I haven't been able to pinpoint what the being was, and that it would shield itself. So that kind of, I can look at it like a drone, really. If you can imagine a really small drone, and I kind of see it as it goes round. But with these, it moved with it, so you can only see the back of them. And it's just this dark kind of brooding thing that I couldn't put a name to. And you can sometimes find that in areas that have been disrespected, like, really badly. So the case at Dorking Deepdene is a good example of that. Dorking Deepdene was an ancient ground, and during World War II, they actually built tunnels down there so that they could hide the trains from the Germans. And a lot of people go down and film down there at Urban Explorers and things. And one lad was out with his brother. I spoke about it in the earlier premiere. And they were just waiting on people leaving so that they could sneak in and go down. And he said they suddenly realised that all of the dogs in the area around started to make a racket, like they were barking and making a right noise. And he said, I suddenly tuned into it and thought, hey, that's strange. And as he did, they heard this massive roar. And when they heard the roar, all the dogs went silent. And he said, just as we were about to get up and go into the tunnel, this thing that we couldn't see came charging through the greenery house. And the greenery was snapping and breaking, and you could see it moving through the top of the trees. Almost like the Predator film. And then there's a guy at Henley, near the Crooked Billet pub down there. If you know that area, you'll know the pub. And he said the same thing. He's a tree surgeon, and he was resting after his job that day. And he said, whatever was moving through those trees was as big as an orangutan, but I couldn't see it. I could see it was the noise of the branches breaking that alerted him to it. And he first thought it were kids. He said, and then I thought, that's a bit much for kids. And he went in to see what was happening. And he said there was huge boughs of trees on the ground that had been snapped and broken. But you could not see that creature, that thing, that being, as it moved through there. You could just see this essence of it, the energy of it, the shape of it, as it moved through that greenery. So that's kind of, tonight we've looked at all 4 possibilities. I don't think I have any that could be tech, but one that springs to mind instantly is Bempton. I think that whatever's going on at RAF Bempton is a technology of some kind. Because that thing, full on like that, you could see it, but when it turned, it was gone. And it was like in an instant kind of thing. And I think that the ones that are happening very close to the Ministry of Defence land, I think there's some form of maybe super soldier, hybrid super soldier. I mean, we know that pre-World War One, several countries in the world were trying to impregnate females with chimpanzee or gorilla.
DNA.
You know, DNA, that's a good way of putting it. Mark was struggling for the word then. In the hopes of building a superhuman, you know. We've heard about the experiments and everything. We don't know what's down there in those tunnels, do we? We don't know what's at Pie Green. We don't know what's in a lot of these installations. The Standing Wolf at Alconbury. I mean, it's never ending. One thing I did notice this week was a number of reports. I hadn't really put them together before. At prisons. So people who are in prison, who see something through the window and actually make the report while they're in prison. So I thought, I'll put them all together in one podcast. On Wednesday night, I sat down and did an interview with Billy. We had a chat, really, me and Billy from Ireland. And we sat down and we had a natter, and he let me tape it over Skype. So I'm going to put that on Wednesday for you. So that's an extra one going out this week. Saturday we'll be back with a normal premiere and a live stream. And the following Wednesday, I've got an interview with Chris, the guy from Bushcraft, Sussex, who actually sat down and spoke about his experience where he's at camping and he hears something around that camp that is not a deer or a horse on 2 legs or a boar or a badger or any of those things, because he's used to the noises of those things. He actually sat down on camera, and he's one of the very first, I think, bushcrafters in the UK to actually say, look, this is what happened to me that night and I can't explain it. He is not into cryptids. He's not really got an interest in the subject at all. But he is prepared to go back, get some cameras up there, set some hair traps, do all the things that we ask people to do forensically. Because if we've got to prove that there's a flesh and blood creature out there, then that's what we need to be doing. So I'm going to wrap things up tonight. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined me. I'm going to take my meds and go off to bed, I think. So if you want, you can join me on Wednesday with Billy. I'll pop it on as a premiere so I can be in the chat and have a chat with you all. So until then, thanks to everybody that joined me. Good night, everyone.